Hey free-to-play gang, welcome back to another video. Now this video is not really a tier list, it is still going to tier Espers according to what my preferred resonance tiers are, but it's not actually saying like this Esper is better than another Esper in general content or whatever it may be, right? So for today, we are going to talk a little bit more about resonances, and this has been brought up by one of the comments. So thank you so much for the idea, and I hope this actually kind of clarifies or at least is somewhat similar to what you were expecting. Anyway, I have segregated 5 different tiers because it's kind of dumb to have R1 all the way to R6, so I've split it according to R0, R1 to R3, R4, R5 and R6. Now the reason why I separated R4, 5 and 6 this way is because some Espers truly just need R4 and they can function perfectly well, whereas some Espers either really need R6 or they just excel so much with R6. Now the thing is, obviously R6 is the best for every single Esper. So like for example Sally, who is clearly an R0 Esper, she is going to thrive so well with R6 because she has more HP, she has maybe more defensiveness or whatever it may be. But in most cases Sally would do perfectly well as R0, and that's not saying that she's bad, that's not saying that she's not a priority, that's just saying that she does not need extra resonances. So the reason why I'm covering a legendary resonance guide here is because we can now farm resonance for free via the club content. So without further ado, let's start immediately. Now I say Sally is an obvious R0 pick, and that's because all she really needs to do is to have very low speed and she's going to perform perfectly. The same goes for Cecilia, Biondina, and Raven as well. So I feel like all these 4 Espers here, they do not need to have any resonance points. So Cecilia just needs to be a sitting duck, she dies, she revives, that's about it. Biondina, she deals enough damage to one-shot any enemy anyway, she don't really need those extra resonances. But if you're going to be running her support, you might consider some additional resonance points to speed and accuracy for example, but in most cases, she functions perfectly fine at R0. Same goes for Raven as well. So the thing is, you want to build Raven with a lot of accuracy, which means that her final damage output is probably not going to match up to that of some other true DPS Esper out there. And as such, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to really build so much attack power for her. She's still going to do just fine. And one thing to take note of is, yes, you cannot use the club content to acquire extra resonance copies of Shimmer legendaries. But if the Mystery Trader comes around, then that would be one other alternative for you to get more copies of Raven. But I'm just saying that you probably do not want to do that. Now moving on to R1 to R3, I'm actually going to start with R1, and I'm actually not very sure about Ollie to be honest. I feel like he just needs the accuracy from the HP tree and I think that's about it. In terms of damage, I don't think it's really that necessary because I don't ever feel like his damage output is really so insane, except when he's using his third skill against a boss type for example. And the same goes for Lewis and Brewster. I feel like they just need the extra crit rate on the attack talent tree, and I think that's about it. The rest is kinda extra. You can be argued that Lewis might need the extra damage when the enemy has less than 50% HP because that's where his third skill becomes a little bit more compounded, but I think that's as far as I would push him. Now for Dona, he just needs R3 just to secure some of the defensive nodes so that he can excel as best as he can. Actually, just move back one step. I think the first 3 Espers here, they perform the best at R2. So for example, for Ollie, he just needs accuracy and crit rate. Same goes for Brewster as well, accuracy and crit rate. And for Lewis, he can do crit rate followed by dealing more damage when the enemy has less than 50% HP. Now, moving on, we have Everett. And I do feel like he just stays at R3 and that's where he kind of excels the most. So I think just give him accuracy and speed up and I think that's about it. And in fact, this is so common that a lot of Espers actually revolve around the same format as well. So for example, JYY, Ahmed, Clara, Abigail as well. So for Jinyu Yao, she requires accuracy and speed. But as for Ahmed and Clara, you might be better off with the healing and then the speed up. But for Abigail, I think she works the same as Jinyu Yao. So basically just accuracy and speed up. And now we have the remaining Espers over here. We have our 3 Shimmers. So I think it's a little bit easier to talk about Unas. So Unas just needs accuracy and speed, very much the same as these 2 Espers here. As for Teva and JJ, I feel like they both share the same path as well, which is basically extra crit rate, more damage on enemies with less than 50% HP, and then the turn 1 preemptive attack. And that's about it for the R1 to R3. Let's move on to the R4. Tricky is going to be the first Esper into R4, and I feel like this is a good place for him to stay at. So the thing is, he does not ever miss, which means that he does not actually need the miss rate reduction talent. But while he needs the accuracy and the speed talent, he also might do well with the additional HP cap damage if he strips buffs. So I think R4 is a pretty good place for him right now. Now for a good chunk of the R4 Espers, for example Gabrielle, Ife, Sienna, Tia, Everett, the one thing that they have in common is that they have a lot of AoE debuffs, well except for Everett of course, and that miss rate reduction is going to benefit all of them very much. Now the reason why Everett kinda needs that miss rate reduction is because his third skill truly requires that effect for him to be a little bit more optimal, especially if he's trying to reset Espers like Ollie for example, who has type advantage against him, so that miss rate reduction is gonna help him a lot. Do take note that it's only his second skill that will never miss, it is not his third skill. And that's about it for the entire R4 cluster, and now we move on to R5. Now what you notice is that Lucas is on R5 but Tricky is on R4, and the reason for that is because, like I said before, Tricky does not ever miss, which means that he does not need the miss rate reduction talent. But for Lucas, he has the potential of missing, especially if he's trying to strip buffs on flow type enemies, and therefore he needs 5 different talents just for him to function properly. Next we have Liling, Nama, and Ophelia, and I feel like these three, they have the same path. So basically you want to do it in a V direction. So you start off with crit rate, followed by extra damage to enemies with less than 50% HP, then preemptive strike because these Espers are kind of like turn 1 nukers. And on the other side of the fog, we want to go all the way up till when you deal more than 35% of their HP, you then deal true damage, which I think works a lot for these Espers over here. And joining all these in R5, we're going to have Zora and we're also going to have Ashley. Now these two Espers, they're going to be kind of similar as well. So the way I would build them might be different from the way you would build them. So I kind of want to prioritize them with the accuracy talent, the speed talent, and of course the miss rate reduction talent. That alone requires 4 talent points. But some of you guys might even want to consider the turn 1 nuking on the attack talent tree. But for me, I feel like these 4 are kind of optimal. And then after that, just the additional crit rate would help a little bit. And then finally, we have the R6 bunch. So these are the 3 Espers here that I think excels a lot if you really kept them out in terms of their resonance trees. So for height, this is quite straightforward. He does really well with many different kinds of talents. So there is a lot of ways that you can play around with height. And besides that, he kind of needs a lot of stats as well because he is a rather stat hungry Esper, because the way you build him is with Hades Avatara. And going by this specific relic set, you will not have additional stat points from any of your set bonuses. And then for Gaius, it doesn't hurt to give him everything you got because he just deals so much damage, clears so much content, and I think if all else fails, he is an excellent choice for you to focus on R6. But then again, it is possible that Gaius could do well with just like R3 for example. And then for Tangxuan, I feel like he, just like height, requires a lot of different stats. So for Tangxuan, I feel like he needs accuracy, he needs speed, he needs a lot of HP, he needs a lot of attack, he needs a lot of crit rate, he needs a lot of different kinds of stats in order for him to function his best. Now, while on one hand that means that he requires a lot of investment, on the other hand, it also means that he has quite a decent potential if you really max him out. And this concludes the Legendary Resonance tier list. It's not really a tier list like I said at the start. Well, hopefully this information is useful for you and hopefully you're able to decide on what Espers you want to focus on next in your club. But obviously with all the videos that I make, this is just strictly my own opinion. Maybe you do not want to go R4 on some of those Espers, maybe you do not want to go R5, maybe you think that, R3 is a good place for all your Espers and then you slowly progress from then on. That could be true as well. Anyway, leave your comments down below, let me know what you think about this list. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Let me know as well. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed today's content. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, it really helps the channel, and subscribe for more Dislyte content. Now with that said, this has been Derek Free to Play, and as always, I will see you in the next video.